Imagine you're a medieval villager in Suffolk, England, going about your day when you stumble upon two children beside one of the wolf pits that dot your countryside. But these aren't ordinary lost children. Their skin is green, not pale, not sickly looking, actually green. They're wearing strange clothing and speaking a language nobody recognizes. This isn't folklore I'm making up. This is an event documented by two independent medieval chroniclers. So what really happened in the village of Woolpit over 8 centuries ago? To understand this mystery, we need to step into 12th century England during one of its darkest periods. This was the era known as the Anarchy, when civil war between King Stephen and Empress Matilda tore the country apart. Chroniclers of the time wrote that Christ and his saints slept, describing a land plunged into lawlessness and chaos. In this atmosphere of turmoil and uncertainty, strange events felt less like curiosities and more like apocalyptic omens. Here's what makes this story particularly intriguing. We have 2 separate accounts, written independently by respected medieval scholars. William of Newburgh recorded it in his Historia Rerum Anglicarum around 1201, and Ralph of Coggeshall, a Cistercian abbot, included it in his Chronicon Anglicanum. These weren't tabloid writers or gossip mongers. These were serious historians, documenting what they believed to be real events. The question is, what were they actually documenting? According to these accounts, the discovery happened beside the wolf pits that gave Woolpit its name. These were deep trenches dug to trap wolves that still roamed the English countryside. Local villagers found 2 children there, a brother and sister, and their appearance was extraordinary. Both had distinctly green-colored skin. Their clothing was made from unfamiliar materials, and when they tried to speak, no one could understand a single word. The children were taken to the home of Sir Richard de Calne, a local landowner who took responsibility for their care. But here's where it gets even stranger. They refused all food offered to them. For days, they wouldn't eat anything, apparently unable to recognize any of it as edible. Finally, they discovered raw broad beans and ate them with desperate eagerness. For months, that's all they would consume, nothing but raw beans. Over time, something remarkable happened. As the children gradually adapted to eating normal food, their green skin began to fade, slowly returning to a more typical hue. But while their bodies changed, their emotional states diverged dramatically. The boy never truly adjusted. He grew increasingly despondent and ill, dying either shortly before or soon after being baptized into the Christian faith. The girl, however, not only survived, but thrived. She learned to speak English, was baptized with the name Agnes, and integrated into English society. In fact, medieval accounts note she became rather loose in her conduct, suggesting she didn't just adapt, she fully embraced her new life with enthusiasm. Once Agnes learned English, she provided an explanation that only deepened the mystery. She claimed she and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, a realm where the sun never shone. Instead, their homeland existed in perpetual twilight, bathed in dim, misty light that never brightened to full day. She described a great river separating their land from a brighter world across the water. According to her account, she and her brother had been tending their father's cattle when they heard the sound of loud bells. Following the sound, they entered a cave and walked through darkness until they suddenly emerged beside the wolf pit, confused and unable to find their way home. So what really happened? The most widely accepted explanation among modern historians involves Flemish immigrants. During the 12th century, a community of Flemish cloth workers had settled at Fornham St. Martin, just a few miles from Woolpit. These immigrants faced persecution, particularly after the Battle of Fornham in 1173, when many Flemish were killed. The children may have been orphaned during this violence, traumatized and separated from their community. This theory explains several key details elegantly. The children would have spoken Flemish, completely unintelligible to English villagers. Their green skin could be attributed to chlorosis, a form of anemia caused by severe vitamin deficiency that actually produces a greenish pallor. Victorians knew this condition so well they romantically called it green sickness. Malnourished children living in hiding or wandering lost through dense forest would develop exactly this condition, which would reverse with proper nutrition, just as the chronicles describe. St. Martin's Land could be a traumatized child's memory of Fornham St. Martin. The perpetual twilight might describe living in hiding in caves or deep forest where sunlight rarely penetrated. But there's another interpretation worth considering. Some scholars view the story as an allegory of cultural assimilation and ethnic tension. In this reading, the boy's death represents resistance to cultural absorption, while the girl's survival and integration symbolizes successful, if painful, adaptation. Her loss of green coloration becomes a metaphor for losing one's distinct cultural identity. Yet mysteries remain. Why would traumatized refugee children recognize only beans as food? What about the cave and the journey they described? Some details fit the Flemish orphan theory perfectly. Others remain frustratingly unexplained. Here's what fascinates me most about this story. It completely disappeared from historical consciousness for 300 years before Victorian scholars rediscovered it, transforming a local legend into a Gothic mystery that captured imaginations worldwide. Each era that encounters these green children projects its own concerns onto them. Medieval chroniclers saw potential supernatural visitors in an age of religious turmoil. Modern historians see refugees and questions of cultural identity. Future generations will likely find yet another interpretation. Whether the green children of Woolpit were Flemish refugees, victims of some forgotten tragedy, or something else entirely, their story speaks to timeless human experiences. The fear of the other, the struggle to adapt to unfamiliar worlds, the pain of losing one's identity while trying to survive, and our endless fascination with mysteries that resist simple explanation. What do you think happened in that Suffolk village over 8 centuries ago? Were these children traumatized refugees whose story became garbled over time? Or does the mystery point to something we haven't yet considered? Share your theories in the comments. And if you want to explore more of history's most perplexing mysteries, make sure you're subscribed, because the past is full of questions that refuse to stay buried.